Hello, my fellow scholars. My name is Professor Thornton. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, but really the only thing I'm going to tell you is that I enjoy leisure reading, and today I read leisurely through this book right here, which is the 7th edition of M. Griffin's A First Look at Communication Theory. I know you have a different book, but mine is cooler, and instead of playing video games or something like that, it would be a lot better to read because, I don't know, none of you probably play video games, so I don't have to go there. Anyway, I'm going to be focusing on the agenda setting theory chapter, which in my book is pages 359 through 371. And to do that, I am going to tell you first about what framing is, secondly, how it is used in media today, and third, the media ethics, just media ethics, but from the standpoint of Clifford Christians. So framing, what is the definition of that? The definition of framing is the selection of a restricted number of thematically related attributes for inclusion on the media agenda when a particular object or issue is discussed. Deep breath. Okay. I could probably have to read that about 10 more times for you to understand it because it took me about 20. That being said, I'm going to use an example that will hopefully be able to help you out a little bit easier, and it's an example that Griffin uses in the book, and it's when he was actually at the Final Four in Florida. And the Final Four is the last 4 teams of probably one of the biggest tournaments in the U.S., if not the biggest, annually. And it's a men's basketball tournament, usually in March, and then Final Four is probably about the beginning of April. Anyway, that's irrelevant. But what he noticed in the paper was that it really highlighted a couple articles in particular that didn't relate to team strategy or interviews by the players or anything. The main articles, there were 5 of them, but the main ones were gambling and local economy. And the gambling of, how you can benefit from this team, who you should pick, stuff like that, to be able to come out on top on your bets. Secondly, local economy, how this tournament would help Florida and how it would benefit them. But there was one more article that was actually tucked into the paper, like a really small article about the exploitation of players and how a lot of them won't graduate either because they're going to go to the NBA because they're good enough, or they flunk out because they couldn't make their grades. So you see the emphasis of the gambling and local economy. A lot of the money, our society is so revolved around money these days that that's what people want to focus on. But the players that they make their money on, they're hardly focusing on the fact that they may not even graduate or finish their education. So what you see there is an example of framing, really kind of emphasizing these things instead of maybe the other one, maybe the more important one, but this is what the media wants you to focus on. Now I'm going to tell you about how framing is used in media today. On page 366 of my book, it talks about how reporters want newsworthy articles, and I mean that's a given. Of course they do, because that's their job, and they want things that people want to listen to. That being said, the authors of this chapter, McCombs and Shaw, say that media not only tells us what to think about, they also may tell us how and what to think about it, and perhaps even what to do about it. So in 1988, George Bush Sr. and Michael Dukakis, which is a word that Dr. Bailey will probably soon have in his curse word vocabulary, they were written about in an article by Time magazine, and the title of the article was Nice Man versus Iceman. So automatically you want to lean towards George Bush because no one wants a mean man for president. You want someone who will be thinking about the citizens, someone who won't be selfish and just try to gain benefit for themselves. So that's another example of framing and how it is used in media today. Now I'm going to tell you about media ethics from the standpoint of Clifford Christians. First, a little bit about Christians. He was a professor at the Institute of Communications Research at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and he was also the author of Good News, Social Ethics, and the Press. Christians really kind of focuses on this thing called communitarian ethics, and the definition of communitarian ethics is a moral responsibility to promote community, mutuality, and persons in relation who live simultaneously for others and for themselves. So, media criticisms must be willing to reestablish the idea of moral right and wrong, because you can't just, okay, I think I'm going to start today and have a little bit of a different approach to this and just give information and it'll all be okay. No, the ethics really need to be revamped and redone from the standpoint of right and wrong, so that people know what's okay to put out there in media, what's not okay to put out there in media, because what it talks about is promote community and mutuality. Mutuality meaning living together, a mutual way of understanding information, rather in it making, like, allowing you to interpret it the way you want to interpret it, not getting CNN's interpretation of it or Time Magazine's interpretation of it. Communitarian ethics, as Christians talk about, is actually based on the Christian ideal of agape love, and the truth of agape love is the unconditional love for others because they are made in the image of God. And connecting with communitarian ethics is this idea of mutuality, this idea that everyone's equal, the fact that no matter if you're if you're a Christian or not, you're still made in the image of God and He still loves you. And that being said, Christians believe that journalists have a social responsibility to promote the sacredness of life by respecting human dignity, truth-telling, and doing no harm to innocence. So they're put in that position of leadership and of media to not take advantage of human dignity, but to tell people what actually is going on and allow them to interpret it themselves. Lastly, Christians says that he ultimately judges a journalist on the basis of how well they use the media's power to champion the goal of social justice. So how they use that for the benefit of society, not for the benefit of their news station, not for the benefit of themselves, but for the community as a whole. And when that community is seen as being benefited, then that news avenue will be benefited as well. So today I've told you about framing. I've told you how it is used in today's media, and also talked about some media ethics from the standpoint of Clifford Christian. I hope that this professor brain and a wealth of knowledge would overflow through this media device to you, and that this helps you do good on your quiz, because I don't have to take it either. So that's a plus. Anyway, y'all take care and have a great night.